the CSR in last 2 decades, if you look at, and particularly after the mandate of 2%, it's about a lot of KPIs that gets reflected internally into the firms, and there is a social reality out there. So how to integrate or the balance between what the internally the firms are doing and should be doing, and what the social reality outside, and the intersection of it, a very interesting and important issue that emerges, that to what extent it is an optics, or should it begin as an optics and then it will become probably real, or as we have seen progressively in last 2 decades, so the social economic scenario in India has changed considerably. So looking at the changing outside social context, the organizational growth and the law itself. So at the intersection of these three, we'll be organized and thinking through around this. And for the first round, I'll request each one of you probably for a minute and two to open up this. And then we'll take the second round of questions on extent of all these three together.
I find that outside of the top couple of hundred companies, which are, like the Infosys, that level, most other companies, even once they get up to 1,000, 2,000 crore market cap, the CSR is done at the board level. Very, so the reporting, everything. So they just, hand it to one of the directors to kind of implement, and probably the HR head is where it sits. I have found, actually, this goes to your point earlier, even though the 2% includes potentially hiring a team internally, nobody wants to own that team. Right? I mean, I think you all know it better than I do, running companies directly, is that it doesn't sit, if it sits anywhere, it's probably in HR, and the HR person is really not interested. And then you're looking at, again, creating a mini empire inside, with a budget and with a spending mandate. So people worry about this, and unless they are big enough and the budget, the CSR budget is big enough that they can justify that. And also a lot of manufacturing companies in India in particular, the revenues are lumpy, right? So 1 year you may have a, like couple of crores for CSR spending, and the next 2 years you may have nothing, right? So that smoothing out, that's also one of the challenges, is to, because they don't have and companies work it's very difficult for them to kind of budget on an ongoing basis and to kind of manage it, even though they can, right? It's supposed to be the average profit over a few years. It's not supposed to be annual, but, in practice, I find that creating KPIs first involves devoting the resources internally, right? Unless there's some, particularly independent board member who takes on that responsibility and does it, I think the vast majority of companies haven't quite gotten to that level yet. Now, having said that, what I've also seen is that typically, the spouse of the founder or somebody like that will take that on and use it for their pet projects, right? And there'll be some accountability, because ultimately they need the documentation for the for the audit and for the scrutiny. So there is something going on, but there's nowhere near as structured as we imagine, right? And I do find that perhaps there is room initially for a set of external consultants, like an industry to develop, where they can advise, because this is not the core function of these companies, right? So it's very hard for to get buy-in for them to do it. But if it's a reputable consultant that has that ability to implement and then to produce a reporting and to present to the board and then show the results, I think that's probably a good way to start. I mean, as with anything in India, you're not going to get internal buy-in. Let's start with something. I think the external consulting is probably the way is a way.
I mean, I'm just again talking about, in this particular case, my company. Until Mr. Reddy was chairman, this function was directly reporting to him. Okay. Of course, things changed after he, moved out, but still, I think the focus and, impact that team creates, I mean, that part continues, and still it is with a function which is quite passionate on this. Okay. So that way, but then I'm sure that's not the average or normal inside the industry. Okay. But yeah, I mean, how do we solve it? It's a difficult thing for everybody. But I think the larger issue is like, how do we really create the accountability for this spending, right? In an industry wide, and some of that we discussed in the earlier discussion. So, we can't really entrust this to the government, because then you will have a new framework, and then you will have a new bureaucracy on that, and and the new set of processes, and again become, we call khana purti in Hindi, right? So, then also you really can't create a industry body for it, because I think he was Srinivasa form person. He said it was created in CIA, but then it fizzled out, right? So I think it is end of the day, it is up to the person, right? It's all about finding set of passionate people inside the company, inside the society. And an NGO is not a correct answer also. I mean, there are very few NGOs who are actually doing good work. I mean, half of them, or majority, a good number, are just to get money and then do whatever with that, right? It's about how do we really create a good pool of people who are passionate about making a change in the society. And that can come from anywhere. I mean, it can come from academia, it can come from corporate, it can come from the government. And then how do we bring them together to really start sharing more about what is being done, to really making difference on what can be done better, the way things are being done.
I mean, that's a good segue into what I wanted to add, and probably a bit of it I touched upon even in the previous session, right? So how do we solve for it? One bit is, of course, involving those passionate people. So in our organization, what we have done is, right, we encourage volunteers getting involved on ground, so we have multiple tiers, right? 3 pillars. So future skilling programs, where it's an opportunity to upskill, and we volunteer by sharing our knowledge, right? Training them and giving them opportunity to upskill, working with the NGO partners. The second bit is about the green environment space, right? I mean, how are you contributing to the environment? That's one bit of it. And third, of course, it's about taking the employment bit to next level, as in, some of these kids or programs which we have trained, I mean, we have even absorbed those candidates, right? They become engineers and, join our organization, or even get employed by, let's say, other organization as well, right? So that's a 3-pronged thing, basically making it sustainable. And now there are 2 sets of people. There are people who actively want to contribute to it, and there are others who are inspired because when these stories are covered, it's it's spoken about. Others are they want to join, they don't want to board the wagon, right? So the other bit is and how do you motivate everyone else? I mean, we don't want to limit it to, let's say, we are 10,000 strong people, right? You don't want like the 50 odd people only doing only a 50 handful. There's also encouraging, you can call it a carrot, but giving volunteering leave, especially. So the ones who are passionate don't look for it, but the others who are probably doing it for the leave, I mean, they can, that's an option too. So that's one bit of it.